So I have just met Geoffrey Miller, and he's already starting to impress me with some of his knowledge base. This is going to be an exciting presentation. He is a true Renaissance man. He's been working with electricity and science since he was 5 years old. He's created laboratories and has researched this field extensively. He's going to be presenting on 30 to 40 years of the free energy over unity technology research. He's going to be specifically speaking about 6 researchers who've been doing fantastic work in this field. So without further ado, I'd like to give you Geoffrey Miller.
Okay, hello. I can't really see anybody out there, but basically I want to thank the GlobalBEM for people coming here, and I'd like to thank all the people that are on the streaming and all the people that yet will see this. So let's get this thing going. My name's Geoffrey Miller. You figured that out. Let me see. Okay, these are my websites. This is my old lab in 1986. This is the old lab in 2016. This is me taking apart the lab, basically about 6 months. We moved basically about 40 tons of equipment. This is inside of it. If anybody has seen the actual lab photos and some of the actual YouTube videos, you'll see what was actually in there. This is the empty lab. We had about 40 or 50 of these trucks that moved everything. This is actually the moving, stacks and stacks. We had over 250 of these crates. Then when I got into the new building, it's 4,000 square feet. I basically had to sit there and build about 20 shelving units and 12 lab tables. This is just the very first pictures and everything. It's gigantic. Here's another picture of the lab. Here's some of the capacitors, some equipment, everything. It's all over the place. What I had to do way back in the 80s and everything and 90s, when I did some research on a variety of projects, what I ended up doing is I had to build a project that would fund me. So what that project was called the PULL-OUT. And the PULL-OUT stands for Portable Ultimate Loadable Lockable Operational Utility Table. And what we did is it's a toolbox that goes in and out of a pickup truck. And you could put anything on it. And then they all pop out and they come out within about 3 minutes, 30 seconds if you have like 2 people. And that's what they actually look like. And so that's the one that we were going to put into Home Depot in 2008. The economy crashed out. We put $1.5 million into the whole project. And then the people didn't want to put up the last $1 million to go ahead and put the mold and cut the mold for the unit itself. So this is what the unit itself looks like. And you have all your tools available, boom, boom, boom. The reason why I wanted to do this, we were going to put a free energy device in there. And we still will be, because that project right now is starting to get kicked up again. And so then a friend of mine that helped us greatly, and a woman helped us greatly to get us into this lab. They came in, they saw what I was in, the giant mess I was in, and they just basically said, you got to get out of here. We'll get you a place. So unbeknownst to me, the same day we talked about it, they go ahead and they look at a building that the PULL-OUT was actually stored in. And when that PULL-OUT was stored in and everything, I never watched news because I'm too busy to do stuff. Something told me to turn the TV on. So when I turn the TV on, I sit here and hear the building's burning down to the ground. So I sit here and go, well, that's pretty cool, And just before that, about a month before that, all the PULL-OUTs were actually stolen out of the whole place. We had a total of 18 pre-production PULL-OUTs ready to go. So this also reminds me of the Tesla Tower. So that still sits there. Meanwhile, this was 11 alarm fire. It was unbelievable. So if people want more information about it and everything like that, they can go to mobileutilitytoolbox.com and go ahead and see, what that project's about. And what that was supposed to do is fund this. Well, now we're looking at other sources, but we will be getting this project out there. Now we get into the free energy. Now, is the word free energy the right word to use? Well, let's put it this way. In life, I hate to tell you, but nothing's free. It's not going to happen. Look around you. Is this building free? Is, computers free? Anything like that. But what is free is the knowledge and the knowledge base that you can pass on to each other. That's free. And that's what's real power. And once you're able to pass that knowledge back and forth to each other and share it, then all of a sudden, then you can start seeing energy. And what most people see as energy in our world right now is the financial dollar. And what that really represents is actual energy within you that you can disseminate and share with other people. Now, remember when you were little kids and everything, you're like 5 and 6 years old, and you go ahead and you see, oh my God, Johnny's not going to share his little Tonka truck with me. And he takes it away and he doesn't want to share it. And you feel all bummed and you go cry to mommy, and all of a sudden you go like, why didn't he share it? I'm a nice little kid. Well, that's what we should be doing today. So then you have the same type of people that get up to the higher structures of things, and then they don't want to share. And that's really the problem, is sharing. Once you understand how to share, you have to share within yourself and share with others. Once you get that going, then the energy will flow and the consciousness will rise. Until then, it's not going to do anything. So, free energy from 1950 to 2016. Free energy. Is it real? It depends on who you ask. You can ask several people who've worked on projects and everything in their own shops, in their own labs, everything like that. They find a unique thing. They may not be trained to understand it and everything, but to them, it is sort of free energy within their learning curve. Now, the big question is can we go ahead and produce something that is reliable, that you can actually go ahead and use it as so-called plug and play? And so then you meet this guy. And this guy right here is the free energy guy. And what he does is he attracts every type of consciousness in the world. And he's a character, And he runs around and goes, wow, I'm going to go ahead and look at this person where I'm going to suck him right in. So the next thing is the key thing to what Mr. Free Energy guy really wants to suck in is, guess what? Tons of money, And that money is the energy. And once you share that type of money with people, then all the actual pieces of equipment, everything like that, can actually be made for people. They can actually use it. And there's always a ratio when you start looking at it. The people that are very, very creative usually never have any money because that's not what they're interested in. They already have the creativity in their hands. What they're amazed at is the people that are sort of on the other learning curve, which is so-called the uncreative. That's one of the reasons why people spend $50 million for a Picasso that's probably fake. So at the end of the day, they're like, well, I feel that I have some creativity around them because they're not that creative. But what they're able to do is they're able, if they understand, to share it. And that's why we're looking really for benefactors, not investors. Because once you understand a benefactor and investor, then you can go ahead and see that they're totally two different animals. An investor just wants a return on their investment. And a benefactor, usually, if they truly want to be a benefactor, will help out. And that's sharing. Again, we're back to that word. Now, at the end of the day, the free energy stuff all comes down, or energy comes down to these two things. And basically, a coil magnet does it equal energy? Well, that depends on who you ask, how you configure it. Now, when you go back to the 1800s, they didn't even have the second thing, which is a magnet. And when you look at the magnet, they had to make everything with wires. So the whole technology was based on wire. And if you understand how to manipulate wire, it's like an artist that manipulates a paintbrush. And then you start seeing new situations. And when you combine the situations of the groups, then you can get basically a working unit. Now, the people I'm going to talk about is John Searle, Newman, Joe Newman, Rick Friedrich, Mike Walters, this guy, Jeff Miller, and John Bedini. And all these people have worked in the field. And they've also built things, and they've also tried to bring out the free energy under their own ideas and everything. So let's go to the first person, which is John Searle. John Searle, basically, I met him back in 1992, 95, and I basically corresponded with him for a period of about a year. I have letters written back and forth. I asked him point blank, says, what do you need to produce what you say that you did with your generator? He said, okay, I'll send you a list. That's what he did. I went out and spent $5,000, went ahead and made all the pieces of equipment. Then at the same time, there was another guy named John Thomas that I didn't know at the time. And he goes, oh, by the way, I'm coming over to America, and let me tell you where I'm going. And he did. He says, you know where Rochester, New York is. So I go ahead, wow, that's cool. So when I went to Rochester, New York, I met him basically next day, like on a Saturday. And that's me right there with John. I produced a whole bunch of models and everything for him so that we could talk in real time. So basically, it's everything that he talked about, but I did it in a model form. Plus, I actually had live pieces of equipment there so that we could actually talk about the technology. At the same time, there's a camera thing there that filmed everything. So then that's John, Geoff, John Thomas, and John Searle. And so we talked and everything like that, basically for about 18 hours. And that's John, and my friend Nancy. And so then what happened is several people have asked me about this generator. And remember, the generator he did and the claim that he made is basically he went ahead and he worked in a motor rewound shop, and he discovered this technique with these magnets so that you could have a roller roll across a bar magnet. And what he used to do, he told me the story, is he used to get pints of beer by betting people that I could make this roller go round and round and round. And so that's what he did. So he would go into a pub, and that's how he got free drinks and everything. So what I wanted to do is go ahead and duplicate that. So what I did is, like I said, I did a model. So people have asked me about that model. So that model right here is what John claims to be a glass demonstrator that he built in the 1970s. And so what that picture is that's off my TV, and there was a movie made back in 2008, a documentary about John's work. So all of a sudden I'm watching it one day, and then whammo, I'm like, whoa, that's pretty cool. That looks familiar somehow. And so why it was familiar is because I gave them a whole bunch of pictures and everything when I left after I got back, I sent them pictures. In 1992, 93, we just went to CVS and we had a real camera. So then that's a close-up of it. That basically he has rollers that go around rings. Basically there's an AC waveform that's imprinted upon both sides. One is a little head of the other, and basically it goes around and round and round, chasing its tail like a tree rat going around a tree. So then basically you have a light, and it lights up the light, and then that's the whole unit. What happened is that unit and that picture and everything was the unit that I took up to John Searle. And that's the unit that we discussed so we can actually talk about its technology. So that was actually shot in the back of Nancy's driveway, or her grass part of the driveway. So that actual model is sitting here, 1988, and then where it is right now is it's sitting in my new lab right there by the doorway. And so that's the answer as to where that came from. And so at the same time, the technology and everything is still trying to be figured out. Most people, and I think it's Jason Fabelli and Fernando that are actually working. Now, when I saw a video, I recently saw, you can see up there that the actual pictures up there. So a lot of people asked me about that, so I thought I'd explain it. But I worked with John and everything. Now, the funny thing was that he was supposed to come down at the end on Sunday. He never showed up. And then he never showed up and never showed up. And I ran into him about 6 weeks later, and he was doing a closed seminar and everything. And John Thomas did not actually want me to talk to him at that point. At that point, that was it. And so I still have all the equipment, and John is totally welcome to come to the lab and actually show how he did it back in the 1950s. All you have to do is imprint the roller and the bar magnet and go from there. It's as simple as that, and that's what I told him at the time. And so then after that, he goes on to, I think it was a Tesla Society conference and everything in '96. And then he goes ahead and he says, well, the guy that made all the models and working units, he didn't show up. And I have that on tape. So I just wanted to put a record straight as to where I stand with John Searle. You know, and one of the things about it is in this field, the worst thing you can do is start to go ahead and say something and let it out and then not be able to prove it. There's no point in doing that. All you're doing is wasting people's time. So this is John Searle's team as of 2015. I'm not sure who the characters are and everything like that. I just know that there's Fernando and Jason Verbelli, and then there's Sir Searle sitting there. So that's the end of the Searle thing. So then we get on to John Bedini. John Bedini basically, he made a device way back in '84. And what he did is he went to the LA Coliseum, I think, not LA Coliseum, LA conference. And what he did at that point is he developed a working device that put out 6,000 watts on a wire that was as thin as your hair. And that's the lights right there. This is the device right there off of the video and everything. And what I do is I reproduce a lot of people's technology for the validity of it, and at the same time so that I can implement things that are better or change it to understand it. So then what I did is develop the whole entire device that he did. What he did basically is piss off the electric companies. He literally sat right here, and on a podium he told them, we don't need you. We're going to be developing these devices, and that's it. So as the story goes, he basically lost a couple labs, everything like that, and he basically was running out of town after that. Then what he did is he went ahead and he changed the model. He wrote a little book, and this is called the ENERGIZER motor in 1984. And basically it's a flywheel, there's some magnets, there's commutator, and there's actual coils on there. And it backfeeds itself into a battery, and it pulses it back and forth and keeps it going. And then what he did is, at that point, there was demonstration, and it got turned into the Watson machine. And there was a guy named Watson that built this on a bigger level at the symposium or conference. He went ahead and they stole the batteries that night because they wanted to see what the batteries did. And basically it became a cold boil, and it was cold, and then that was what some people wanted to see. After that, the Watson machine disappeared off the face of the earth. I don't even think John Bedini knows where it is and everything. So then what he did after that, he had more characters come and knock him up, you know, against the wall and said, you can't be doing that. So in an era way back in the 80s and 70s, that wasn't allowed. Today we have a little bit more, you know, leeway to do things. At the same time, what he did is he turned it into an SG unit, and that stands for a schoolgirl unit. Little girl made it. She made and won a science fair and everything like that. It ran for about 2 weeks, everything like that. So then a lot of people have developed these things. A lot of people have played with them, everything like that. It works if you understand the technology. And I'll be able to, in the future, I would like to give workshops because I want to teach people how to do this quickly, not like 10 years, not 2 weeks, not paying $10 billion to learn it, you know. So that's the one that was in my shop and everything. And then basically I ran it, and at the tail end of the shop, which was about 6 months ago, it ran for about 3 weeks, and it ran a lot of the lights that were in there and everything like that. It's since been totally retweaked, everything like that. It's able to, I'm going to be putting it in my, well, it's in my shop, but I'm going to be putting it live, and it will run all my lights and my machinery limitedly up to about 5,000 watts. So that basically ends John Bedini. The next guy is named Rick FREDRICK. He was a guy that basically was a Porsche mechanic. He went, found out about the SG unit, went ahead, started tinkering around with it, and basically what he did is, at the time, Rick FREDRICK started selling little parts. People were asking, how can I get transistors, coils, wires, things like that. So at the end of the day, he goes ahead and he starts putting out these kits. He starts building them, everything. He ends up having about 3 conferences out there in Idaho with John Bedini. They basically go ahead and they split apart for various reasons I'm not going to go into, but they're, you know, they're just, there's tons of backstory on both of them. At the same time, what he's done is he lost everything from the last conference. And when he lost everything, he basically had to regroup himself for about 4 or 5 years. When he did, he basically now goes ahead and he has Renaissance Charge, which is he sells battery chargers and everything that has the same technology as the mechanical unit that you're looking at right there. And what that's able to do is put a pulse in the battery, charge the batteries the correct way, and then you can manipulate them once you understand the technology. He, right here, now sells kits. So if you go to Renaissance Charge, you'll be able to see the kits he sells and understand the technology. So the next person is my friend, Mike Walters. I've known him for about 3.5 years, fantastic guy and everything. We've had our ups and downs, we both know why. But an unbelievable person. What he's done is basically he's been an inventor pretty much all his life. He's done tremendous. It's just there's so much to talk about. But what I want to get to is basically one of the best things on the planet on alternative energy, which is basically his wind turbine. His wind turbine will outdo anybody's turbine in the world. Basically, I've tested it, I've run it, everything like that. All we need is a benefactor that will be able to put in the money so that we can go ahead and get these fan blades that are up there and designed by aerospace and pilots, basically, that went ahead and put 3 blades up in the, you know, on the, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, you get the idea. Those windmills, that's it. So basically, that's what it looks like. The energy goes into the whole gigantic fan there, basically, and then it creates total drag. Now, if you spin this, you're not going to get any wind out of it. So it's like a one-way diode at the end of the day. And that's the side view and everything. And basically, we could actually go ahead, if we had the money and everything, we could start building kits and everything that people could actually put on their houses and everything like that. So there's a lot more. He will be able to be speaking at the end of this conference, so I will leave that at there. So the next person, and he is the one person that probably in the history of all free energy, this guy has gone through more unbelievable change and things that I can't even speak of. I met him after a certain situation. I'll explain that in a minute. His name is Joe Newman. And Joe Newman has what's known as the Joe Newman motor. He wrote a book the same time that Bedini did back in 1984. His book was, I think, about 6 months earlier than Bedini's book. And so they're very similar machines in a way. So what they're able to do, it's a coil wire, it's got a magnet in it, it basically back pumps the batteries. But the funny thing about it is he doesn't use regular batteries. He uses 9-volt batteries and or 6-volt lantern batteries. And what he was able to do is charge lantern batteries up. And so Rayovac got involved with him and went ahead and said, hey, that sounds like a pretty good idea. We want to understand technology. When they realized it was charging dry cells up and everything, they wanted absolutely nothing to do with it because it encroaches upon their infrastructure. They sell batteries. They want them to go in the trash, landfill, whatever, you know. So what Joe Newman, his first invention is in, believe it or not, in Texas, he built the original barbells. And the barbells and everything were for, I think, the football team, Dallas Cowboys and everything. And so that's where he made a little bit of his money to get him going and everything. And then he got a family and everything like that. And then what Joe really is a theoretician. And so he wrote up all his theory and everything in the 60s. And so then what happens is he goes ahead and we fast track to basically 84 and everything. And what he did is he built a gigantic unit. And basically that's about 5,000 pounds of wire, 2 coils. There is the main coil and then there's a generating coil. And the magnets right there and everything are those big orange, the big giant orange ceramic magnets there. He's not a good builder, so to speak, but he tries and he put it together. And the thing about it that I love is if you can build anything out of junk, and that's what I've predicated my lab on, is actually wood, a few screws, whatever you can find at the hardware. Because if the principle works, then it works. you can't make something, you can't make a principle out of something gold. You can't make your machines look absolutely beautiful and this and that. Oh, we've got this. I've seen tons of machines like that and they don't work, you know, because they don't understand principles. So anyway, that's him right there. That's a gigantic coil. He had so much energy on there that he used to light his own stage and everything like that. And you just have to go on the internet. There's so much information and non-information about it. So basically, that's the big coil. That thing just had so much power, it was unbelievable. And it ends up using like 0 amps and 0 watts to run the thing, and then it gets a whole bunch of watts out of it to be able to be usable. And it can be scaled up or it can be scaled down, depending on how you use it. That's him back in '84 with the scientists and everything investigating the whole thing, getting ready for the thing to actually be transported. Again, some more testing and everything in this little shop in Lucille, Mississippi. And this was back in the backwoods, I mean real backwoods, you know. Then they went ahead and they tested the small little device sitting behind the engineers and everything is the actual coil and the magnet. And that basically ran on a 9-volt battery. And what happens is ABC team went down there to interview him and everything on that coil. And they went ahead and they had 9-volt, they had a 12-volt motor. And they went ahead and they ran the 12-volt motor, ran for about a minute and a half. After that, they put it on the NEWMAN machine. That ran for 8-9 hours. Then they had to leave, ABC had to leave. So they took that same battery, they took it off, they put it back onto the motor. The motor ran for like 2.5, almost 3 minutes after that. And these are dry cell batteries that were dead. So once you get it going, it charges it up, it back loops it, and then the device can go ahead. Now that, remember, it's a motor. So then you have to connect that motor to something, and which is what he did. He built a lot of these units. So then he ends up having conferences. He had this one in LA and everything. There was close to 2,500 people in the room, and there was basically 2,000 people waiting outside. This was all in the 80s. There was so much press. He was on the Johnny Carson show. He had several cars made for him that rode around. He did the Superdome down in New Orleans. Then what happens is he gets, there goes a picture of another motor he made and everything. And he was just relentless. So he was going up just like a hockey puck curve. And he goes ahead and he applies for a patent. So then when he applies for patents, this group, the people who are investing in him, go, we want a patent. Back in the day, a patent was like everything. If you didn't have it, nobody moved on it financially. So they go ahead and have the patent. Then the patent house doesn't really like certain things in it. So then the next thing you know, you get the lawyers. And then the lawyers come in there. Well, they can mess anything up. Hell crap. I don't know how they got into the universe, but somehow they snuck in. And so then the lawyers come in here, and they go up against basically the whole patent house. And so basically you figure out what's going to happen next. This is what happens, you know. Patent rejected. Joe did not take it lightly at that time. And I think that was the death call for him at that point. When he realized that the investors started pulling out and everything, they wouldn't put the money in to go ahead and build these units on a bigger scale and more of a production scale. Now, speaking of production scale and everything, it's one thing to go ahead and develop something in a lab. It's another thing to totally go ahead and make it a pre-production unit, let alone going into a production unit. Because the 3 people you have to satisfy is A, the investors, B, the manufacturers, and C, the end users. If you don't have that triad and you don't look at their positions, then you will not ever have anything successful come out of it. So basically when that happened for him, he was disappointed. So at that point, I contacted him because I knew, I was talking to him ahead of time, but I knew it got rejected. So Joe was very much a very good country boy. We got along tremendously. Obviously, my favorite place once a day, I basically eat a slice of pizza a day, drink beer at nighttime, and that's it. Or I eat a $1 burger at Mickey D's. And by the way, I had a Mickey D burger in Texas, and Texas has the best meat in the world. So anyway, the next thing is we go in and we sign contracts. And the contracts was he liked me so much that he gave me a license to market his technology. So then after that, I go ahead and I show him his original stuff. It was very simple. He wrote a book. I copied what's in the book. Now, one of the biggest things that most human beings somehow never get to do is follow directions. If you can't follow directions, then you can't get there. That's why everybody now has those goofy little things, the GPS things. That little lady that's babbling to you in that car, telling you where to go, she's your brain now. So, well, you get the point. So I followed the directions, I made his device, and then that's commutator, his little motor, everything just like he said. At the time, he sat there and he said, "You're the only one in the world that did exactly what I said to do." And he just was floored. So basically, the key thing about Joe Newman's thing is commutator. And basically, that's basically what his first commutator work looked like. So at that point, we go to one of the first units that I made. I did this in 1992 so that we could get some investors interested in it for Joe, I, and this one other person. So we did a demo that lasted about 8, 9, 10 hours. There's a clock there. There's an amp meter showing no amps, and then the batteries, they're off to the side. And what I do with Joe Newman's motor to start it is I go ahead and I start it with usually 2 or 3 batteries, in this case, that I was using on this for the demo. So they were live batteries. And then what I do is I had 2 dead batteries on the side. Then I remove 1 live battery once it gets going after about a minute. I put a dead battery into it. Then it charges up the dead battery, remove the second live battery, throw that on the ground, put another dead battery, and then you have both 2 dead batteries that are running the machine at the end of the day and charging up. So that's me after I get to his lab. It was sort of sad because at the time, he didn't have any money. He had a new baby on board and everything like that. So basically, he had to sell off all the copper, and he had to sell off basically everything he had from a copper standpoint. And you have to understand, 5,000 pounds of copper was worth a little bit, but nothing compared to back in 1992 compared to what it's worth today. So now we go ahead, and that's inside the shop. Nancy and I are looking at it and everything. And that was the one that basically went all over the United States. And it was just a phenomenal machine, and he showed me certain things on it. Once you understand the principle, then you can build it in a variety, and I mean a variety of ways. And that's me looking through the glass. He had a mirror that sat there, and that mirror went ahead, and he could look down, and then you could, as an audience, see what the rotor was doing. And then that's I looking up at the motor. I mean, looking up in the mirror, that's actually it. Then we go ahead and we see the batteries. Those are the batteries that Rayovac sent them and everything. And at that point of view, when you saw the Rayovac batteries, they had basically about 1/4 of an inch of dust on there and everything like that. And you could tell that there was a humdrum activity all in the 80s there and everything. And so when I met him about 8 years later, you could tell we were sort of sad because there was nothing, there. And you could tell all the heart and soul that was in that project was right there that went down the toilet with basically the non-patent. So the next thing you go ahead and do is he hooks up the batteries, the old batteries to that, and he starts the commutator, which is a fan motor right there, and he went ahead and started it going and everything. And what I did with him is I implemented and told him he had a round shape. And what I said to get more speed and everything on it, I said elongate the rotor instead of having it round and big and fat and everything. Go ahead and have it elongated. So then after that, he put 2 coils on there. I said double it up, get 2 more coils. So that's why you see the 2 other coils that are sort of not painted on there. Then he made his own capacitors. He rolled up basically Reynolds wrap and Mylar and everything like that. And then he made it because what happens is the back spike, as he called it, the lightning, he couldn't control. So I said, here, let's get a gigantic capacitor. And I told him where to get it. So he started getting the capacitors. So now we're in 2016. And these are one of the original units that I made, basically. All my units, everything you'll see from my end and everything, I made all these things in the last 1.5 years. I worked basically 18 hours a day. You can see a lot of this stuff up on that I basically defunct Paswiki site that Sterling Allen did. Poor Sterling Allen had some side hobbies. Basically, he's in jail, and he may not be coming out. So at that point, but the information's up there. The reason why I bring this up now is the fact that anything that's up there, you should grab, because eventually that whole site's not going to be there. There's basically 14 years worth of information up there. And it's too bad he didn't put it in an archival form that you could actually understand. And so I would grab anything you need up there, because if that site goes down, there's nobody else that was better than Sterling at his job, actually doing that 20 hours a day, researching everything good, bad, and indifferent, putting it up there, and let the audience decide what was valid or invalid. So the next coil is the original one that I made that you saw before that I tested. Speaking of which, that test, when I did that, the investor was there that day and everything. He was going to put in basically about $2 million. He said, come by on Monday. This happened on a Sunday. He came by. He says, come by on Monday. I'll check for you. Sunday night, he dies. Unbelievable. I said, well, you know, those things happen, you know. And one of the things you got to understand, whenever things like that happen, that's where the universe is sitting there going, nope, not yet. You got to go down other paths, you know. And remember, if you know what you're really looking for, you've got angels all over the universe. They're all helping everybody. So once you understand that and you can communicate with them, but remember, the whole ether and all this that we're living in is a construct. It's just like you going into your computer. If you don't hit the right buttons on the computer, you don't tell the computer what you really want in there. If you're looking for a file and everything, computer doesn't know anything. The computer will sit there and go, well, I don't know what you want. You know, and it's the same thing in your life. If you don't sit there and ask what you want. Now, the key thing is you better know what you want, and you better keep that thought going. That's the key thing about perseverance. If you don't have that, then it doesn't keep going. Because remember, like especially on the Mac, the wheel of death keeps spinning. You go ahead and you look at that, and that's the way the universe goes. But there's a time construct here for us. So what happens is it's delayed, and that wheel of death is actually a wheel of life in the universe point of view. And then what happens at that point is it's making what you want. It's going to construct the situation so that you can enter them in time way down in the future. And then all of a sudden you get there and go, whoa, this wasn't really what I wanted. And the universe is sitting there, you screwball. You asked me that like 5 years ago. You forgot. Don't blame me. I delivered what you wanted. So basically at this point, you get to, this is the coil, the commutator. And one of the things is everybody on the internet has made this little commutator, and it's more like a DC motor that they end up doing. Then they say it doesn't work and everything. So that's the connection right there. And it gets involved, but it's a very simple method. And that's one of the things I like to be able to show people, as I say here. If you do this, connect A, B, and C, it'll work. End of story. You don't need a gigantic manual on it or anything. This is me when I was starting to make the big unit. There were 200-pound coils and everything, and I'm winding this thing right there. And basically, one of the things you don't see on there is I had to put a whole bunch of weighted cinder blocks on one side to keep it from falling over. But then you go ahead and you see the big NEWMAN motor, and that's the big commutator to it. And that commutator goes ahead, round, 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 creates the back charge, goes in there. It runs the coils and everything like that. Then this is how big it is. Basically, it's about 1,500 pounds of weight. Basically, this right now, and I'll tell you, you'll see later, that this is probably, unless I don't know anybody that's on the face of Earth, this is one of the biggest NEWMAN motors on the face of Earth now. It's in the lab. Before that, when you saw those tarps and everything in the old lab, that was where I worked. I had to work in the rain. I worked outside. That was what I had to do. End of story. But originally, we had to move that out of the old lab. So that was actually holding up the second floor of the lab that I built. So that took a little while to do. So we pulled that thing out and everything, and then we put it there, and we had to put I-beams in there and everything like that. So that's what we did like a year and a half ago. Then this is, I reconfigured the commutator just to use 2 coils on it and everything. And so it's a very powerful machine, and I'm going to get to a lot of stuff. So pay attention to what this machine is, keep it in the back of your mind right now. So these are the dead batteries I haven't even opened from experiments that I did. So we're going to eventually connect all those up there and run the thing, but there's a whole bunch of different ways you can do this motor. And not only that, there's a whole bunch of other things. One of the things I'm doing with all these inventors and my technology that I haven't gotten to talk about yet is the fact that I want to group them together. There's pieces that everybody can use, and if you cross-pollinate basically these devices, then you will start getting things that work. But individually, certain things may or may not work because they need assistance. It's sort of like basically sharing. And so Joe Newman, like I said, he put his motor in several trucks, and he put it in cars and everything like that. He went ahead and put this in a truck. He ran the truck, everything like that. People just never really, understood how to do this. It's as simple as that. And they didn't want to back him for one reason. And he ends up getting somewhat bitter and everything because he dealt with basically a lot of morons at the end of the day. And he couldn't tolerate it. And one of the things is remember what I said in the beginning, that he basically is a person and a theoretician. So he talked about Maxwell, Clark, Faraday, people like that. Well, there are people, engineers that go to engineering school. They don't even barely know who those people are. So when he would talk to them about this and this and that, do you understand what's going on in the oscilloscope? Do you understand this and this and that? They just didn't understand it. Because basically, when you look at the top 4 jobs, a doctor, a lawyer, accountant, and engineer, they're all safe jobs, because the reason why they're safe is because everything's been done for them. They go ahead, the lawyer just goes in there, boilerplate this, the engineer goes in there, this is how it works, the accountant goes in there, the numbers add up, and the doctor goes in there, and if he tries anything, he just loses his license. Well, they all should lose their license. Things aren't working out too well for most people if they go to the doctor. So basically, at the end of the day, Joe Newman basically did find one guy or 2 guys that helped him. He built a 7-pound motor. He called it Eureka and everything. This is basically Joe, basically in 2012. He had it in a storage place, and he would go ahead and still demonstrate this, and basically he was in his 80s, 78, something like that. And this thing ran, did what it's supposed to do, and all you had to do is, when he did this, he did 2 types of demos. And he would take it around to like Walmarts and place, and he would talk to them. They said, yeah, you can show your thing out there, set up a table. And one of the first things that he did with this is he goes ahead and he sets up the table, and he puts on the table, he puts generators, and he puts lighting sockets, and you could come up and plug in your tool, you could whatever. Well, what was funny is that everybody thought that the generators, he had 2 generators there that were connected to a main generator that was hooked up to the motor. And so what happens is they sit there and they think that the generator is running this motor. And he's got these batteries right in front of him, and he goes ahead, no, that's not it. So people didn't get that. So when they walked away from that demo, they went ahead and said, well, it was the generator running the motor. So they just didn't get it. So then he went ahead and did this thing with a sludge pump. And he ran a sludge pump, X amount of water through it, gallons per minute, blah, blah, blah. And so when you looked at the force, it took that. And then he looked and had a little tiny Granger motor with the same amount of battery input on there. Then you could understand, like, oh, my God. He says, that thing's running that? Whoa, that's pretty cool. Joe and I corresponded, like I said, and this is, I have about 4 or 5 of these from Joe. And basically it says, thanks for helping bring my life's work for humanity forward. Warmest regards, Joseph Wesley Newman. And so at this point, what happens is 92, that's when I got involved with the pull-out project. And so I wanted to run with that. Joe said he was going to go ahead and downstream his motors and everything at the time. And so he started going off in his direction and everything. People wouldn't back him and everything. I had to concentrate on the pull-out. I figured, okay, let's make a better toolbox, basically, to go on and off your pickup truck. And I thought, 2 years, 3 years, let's get patents. I ended up getting 12 patents on the thing worldwide. And so now, that's when we sort of diverged on different roads. And I still kept in touch with his one person, Evan Soule, which was his spokesperson at the time. And so basically he had a lot of people, engineers, everything, validate his work. I know his book's online, so just look up Joseph Newman's book and you can get and read everything that's up there. So then what happened is for last like 3 or 4 years, there was a guy named John Fox. What John Fox did, he was a movie guy, and he decided to make a movie. and he figured Joe Newman would be a good character, so what the hell. So he goes ahead and makes this documentary movie. So this documentary movie basically is called Newman. It's already won about 6, 7, 8 awards. It's still going around in the artsy world of documentary movies. And what's funny about that is the movie should be, and I'm going to talk about it in a second, it should be given to all the free energy people. Right now, people that are seeing it are all your art people that actually want to analyze, oh wow, this is a great movie. Let's see how he put it together, everything like that. So that's where it is now. I think they signed a contract with Netflix, and eventually it's going to be on there. And eventually, I'm still waiting for my own copy of a CD. So if you want to get more information, just go to John Fox's. He has a website, and he also has a Facebook. So go ahead and Facebook him and say, where's my CD? Because all you guys out there are going to be the only ones that keep motivating these guys to start pushing the CDs out. It's a phenomenal movie. I'm not even going to tell you the ending of it. It's an unbelievable ending. So basically, that's the movie's website right there. And so you can get it once you see this over. Then basically, that's the Newman photo gallery that's up there at his website and everything. Go in there, click on there, look at more photos. And then basically we get to this knucklehead right here. And I have no clue who he is, but God knows. So what I did is I go ahead and, like I said, I develop technologies, and I looked and do the experiments and everything like that. I set myself, when everything went down the crapper, I lost everything. You know, I lost my trucks, I lost my apartment. Basically, for about a week, I was just living in the car. And then I while we got together, this little tiny room at Nancy's place. And so I'm living up there. And it was great because when I came from there at nighttime 2 days ago or whatever, it was about 107 in the room. I love heat, so it didn't bother me. But then I come to Texas. I was hoping that at least it would be 105. I come out here, and it's Philadelphia weather, like, you know, rainy and whatever. But so one of the things I did is when I met, one of the good things I will say totally for Sterling Allen was that he brought a couple of people into my life, which I thank him tremendously. And those people, one of them was Mike Walters. And so when he first met me, he comes down in his little Honda, and he sits there, and he goes, let me show you something. So he goes, get in the car. So we get in his little car and everything. He's got a little pencil, and he has this like little wheel. And he says, look at this. And first, it's a little fan blade. And so he goes like this, and he turns on the fan in the car to high, and the little wheel's not doing anything. So he puts it really close, and maybe it was barely turning. So then he goes ahead, and he has a little, his little device, but small one, and his little wind turbine, and he puts it about 2 feet away. He puts the fan on the car on low, and I was like, beautiful. I got to make this. End of story. So that's what I did, and it's just unbelievable. One of the other things that I'm going to show you now is this thing called the CQ. CQ stands for Centrifugal Energy Amplification Conversion Unit. I worked 10 years on this project. Very, very little information is known about it at all. There's a big reason for it. It's a long, long story. And so basically, this is a small unit. It's a pressurized unit. I want to have somebody go ahead and make me the final pressurizing tank. And then we'll be able to have a self-looping system that'll actually work unbelievable. Inside it, basically, there's a turbine that goes inside of it. And the turbine is hooked up to my type of generating coils. And so that's a long-haul story. I just want to keep moving here because there's a lot of slides I still have to get to. That's a big CQ right here. That's basically a 1,000-pound unit. That's going to be used to basically run 2 generators, 10,000 watt each. We'll have 20,000 watts. At the end, we'll be putting about 1,000 or 2,000 watts back into the system, or minus from the system, and you'll walk away with about 18,000 watts. So that basically has a shroud. It basically has turbine nozzles, and then there's a collector that goes with it and everything. And I have a lot of these projects that are almost done. Getting back to when I lost everything, I set myself a 3-year goal. I have 6 months on that 3-year goal to get all these devices up and running. Because I believe when I do a goal, there's an end game to it. So all these devices I'll show you are all in its works. And I'm accelerating certain things right now just because some things are happening out there in the universe right now. That's a QMO. Basically, you have a flywheel, a generator, some pulleys, and if you know how to connect this up right and the ratio is right and everything like that, it'll run. You can pull a certain amount of energy out of it within its system's load. If you go past the system's load and everything, then it won't work and it'll start winding down. Then what I did is I did this project, I sort of called it the Home Depot generator, because basically the Home Depot generator is this is a fancier version of it, but excuse me, I want to be able to make something that you can go to Home Depot and buy all the parts and assemble it and get a small generator system working for you. Because basically at the end of the day, the alternative energy world right now is basically wind, solar, and water. And that's going to sort of slowly get eclipsed with some of the information that's coming out. I have this thing I call it the cold energy unit. Basically, it goes back to a guy named Cromer. It goes back to Bedini that changed a few things. And basically, when you spin this thing up right, it will sit there and cold boil a battery within about 5 minutes. And I mean, when I mean cold, you will touch it and it'll start to frost up on you. At the same time, you go ahead and you put it into a light. It'll start, the light will be cold. The energy can go through a wire about 48, about thin as your hair and everything. Then what happens is that's whole technology that we want to be able to implement into already the technologies that we have. At the same time, I built a solar system here, a solar collector that basically has an inverter and everything like that. And I've used this thing for the past like 6 years, and it's beautiful. I use it to assemble stuff. I just plug it in. Right now, I use it to run my computers at home and everything. That's a bigger unit. That's like a 1,500 watt unit. One day in the brand new lab, the whole building went out. The town went out with electricity. So I quickly, because I had the unit, I had the parts there, I turned on those 2 other units, so I had plenty of light, I had the radio going, everything like that. And then I throw together this unit right here. That's a giant solar cell. There's the back end of the solar cell and everything, so I can wheel that around and everything, and I've used that to run some of my lights and everything. So basically, now ultimately what we want to do is we want to go ahead and put everything into a go-kart. Then once we test the go-kart with the type of generators and systems I want to put together, we will eclipse batteries. So batteries are going to go by the wayside. Even though the new type of technology that are coming out, it's not going to go away in 5 minutes, but we will be able to show you that here, we can run around on go-kart if we put the proper generator and motor configurations. This was a special type of generator and motor that I built. Basically, that is waiting for a commutator, and then that will be up and running. Then we have what's known as the famous QEG, and there's a girl called Hope Girl. She's running around and she's promoting that and everything, and that goes to the old WITS idea of having a generator. It's a reluctance generator. It's not really what Tesla did, but they go ahead and do it. They so-called are still trying to make it work and everything. So that's basically, if you can follow her, you can spend a lot of money, and basically they go for about $15,000 if you order everything and want to play with it. You have to know what you're really doing. It's a very complicated machine. At the same time, it's a very simple machine if you do know what you're doing. Then what we do is, these are 2 cold energy units. I have about 8 of them. The reason being is they're getting ready to test certain theories, and I'd have to do a whole workshop to even explain part of that. Then what we have is we go ahead and we have our motor transfer boxes. These are key. Click over and everything. Now, we get to testing free energy devices in engineering in a language that we all can understand. One of the things I don't like is all these buzzwords, radiant energy, free energy, what have you, scalar energy, whatever. Put it into engineering terms, because engineers are going to have to be able to read the data sheets you hand them on a device. If you do that correctly, then what you're able to do is then investors and benefactors will go, hey, is that real? Yeah, because they're going to bring their own engineer that they trust. They don't know this stuff. All they want to do is maybe put in some money to help, and then they go ahead and say, wow, that's cool. But if you give it to an engineer, you put it in their language, then all of a sudden they can go ahead and teach it. They can talk to the guy, say, yeah, this is unreal. This is, boy, I wish I came up with that idea. So then we have, at my shop, there were some engineers came here to test the SG unit, everything like that. That's basically a scope shot. We were testing NEWMAN motor and everything. Then, this is key. When we get to what I'm about to show you, this is the only reason why we're doing all this stuff, outside of just having fun. But as my friend Nancy, she actually, and I almost did this, what she did is she wanted me to change Energybat labs to busy work labs. But she goes, this is all busy work. Until I see my dryer working on a 30 amp system, this is all busy work. So what we get to is we get down to why are we doing free energy? Well, car, truck, house, train, airplane, boat, and buildings. So the number one thing is your car. Put something in that, put 4 wheels with motors on it, have an energy source that powers those things, and then have no batteries. Remember, it runs on gasoline. Then, this is where the big guys come in. I love the tractor trailer because you're going to have to be able to replace those 2 canisters on the left and right side. They're basically 1,000, 1,200 miles on each side. 2,400 miles they can drive on this thing on diesel. So you're going to have to be able to put a device in there that's going to have the torque to be able to pull, that type of truck. Then the real thing is then we get to your house, and God knows everybody has that. Now, if we can put a generator that goes into a car, that then you can have a cord that can go into your house, then you can actually charge up your house and run your house off your car in case the lights go out. But the key thing is put a 10,000 or 20,000 watt generator that's able to self-loop itself on a car, then you can put it into the house. Then the next thing is this guy, love trains. That's the way I wake up in the morning. I'm a night person, so I'm just lucky I'm actually awake today. So we go ahead and we have the choo-choo train. Well, picture what you're going to go ahead and in there. If you put up a NEWMAN motor that's going to replace the diesel in there and you hook it up to that thing, then you can actually pull this thing off. But you got to have it big. Then we get down to the airplanes. And the airplanes right here, basically, well, you know what that is. That's aluminum tube with kerosene burners on it, basically. And everybody flew in them, or at least they think they did. So then we get to a boat, and the requirements in that, Joe Newman motor and several other things could go into that. Then other big thing is buildings and everything like that. Big, big buildings. Then we get back to my favorite thing that wraps basically this thing really up. And what it is Mike's VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing quad. This thing is absolutely beautiful. It's got motors on there. All we have to do is put, put power density batteries in that thing, put the right motors in there, and then there's another whole thing about all this free energy devices. Once you go ahead and make it, you've got to be able to scale it from 0 to infinity, and that gets back to a principle. So if you can bring it down, then it can go into something like that. Now this thing could hover on the ground 6 inches, it can go up in space and go in the water. And then you go ahead and that's your car. And it can be it can go ahead by GPS. At the same time, if you don't know how to fly it, as you go out to LA, you go ahead and you have this thing hooked up to your iPhone. Boom, that's it. It sits there. Hey, I want my little VTOL here. It comes, picks you up, takes you to LA. At the same time, it'll sit there and instruct you how to fly the thing if you want to. Outside that, it's on autopilot. You sit back, you enjoy it, and have these things. This thing's going to eclipse everything, providing that somebody wants to get back behind this. Brenson, Elon Musk. Who's that other guy? There's another guy, but I forget. So I basically, yes, that's the guy, exactly. Those guys are all shooting rockets up there. God knows what that's doing. At the same time, this is my website. I have one video that I want to show you, and so I think somebody's going to come up here and turn that on. I want to thank you very much for this, and basically, thanks to everybody coming here. Thanks for all the people out there. Have a great day. I look forward to talking, and I'm totally open about talking anything you want to talk about. So have a great day. Thank you for your time. Hello? Oh, yeah. This is basically the SG, and what it does is basically it's got magnets on the rim. It sits there, backfeeds in a circuit. The circuit charges the batteries. The batteries, you can pour X amount of energy out within the load. So as long as you know the end game, which is basically load that you're going to work with, then you have to have a synergetic relationship between what you're going to pull out of that thing and then what it is. But the beauty about this thing is that'll run 24/7. You're not going to be able to get solar. Solar's good for 5 hours, wind goes, and that's it. So thank you. Good luck. Bye-bye.